Hi, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and I recently inventoried all of my video games, which was quite a task, to put things mildly. I started buying games all the way back with the Super Nintendo and, with the help of my local Funko Land, rest in peace, then went back for the NES. It's the sort of thing that's easy to keep up with, but trying to put together a list of everything I picked up in the past 30 years, all at once is, like I said, a task. So it'd be a shame if I couldn't turn it into a video, especially since I need at least another week to put together a review for Mega Man 64. So hey, let me yammer on a bit about my collection, throwing in some interesting tidbits where I can. First, I should probably explain how this is organized, and if you want to skip this part, I won't blame you. This is really only going to show how neurotic I am, but hey, it might make things a little easier to follow along with, though it won't necessarily match the order I put the list together in. Each is organized by publisher, then console, home console first, then handhelds, by release date, and finally, each title is listed alphabetically, words like A and the not counting, because I'm not a savage. Games I own physically are typed normally, digital stuff is italicized, if it's on my backlog it's green, if I at least started it, it's yellow. If someone's borrowing it from me, it's red, and if it doesn't work, probably because I bought it used and didn't test it in time to raise a stink, it's gray. You stupid idiot. That's the gist of things. Told you I was anal. Anyway, I also considered including my controllers and peripherals on the list too, but there was a part of me that thought I might be giving away too much just by listing out all my games. I almost feel like I'm asking to get burgled here. Be really easy to resell it all with it inventoried like this, a real, my fortune is yours for the taking, you just have to find it first, sort of situation. So you're gonna just have to imagine some of the stuff I have to mess around with. And remember, if you do get any funny ideas, I keep 2 apex predators as pets, and also have a few crowbars around the house to bash intruders' skulls in with. Maybe consider knocking over a GameStop instead. So after I threw in some tabs, I decided the best place to start would be older consoles that I didn't own much for. I keep the stuff on my backlog on a separate shelf, at least the physical ones, so not only are old systems not going to have any digital stuff I need to check on, all their games are either going to be stuff I've already beaten or given up on. Thus, we start with the Sega consoles. I never owned these when they were new, I got them all while retro collecting. While I found several things I was interested in for Genesis in secondhand store bins, sadly, the only Sonic game I dredged up at a decent price is Mean Bean Machine, which is cool, but I really would like to get the original trilogy at some point. Probably more interesting is what I have for Saturn, since I think I got all of them in a lot. I got the console and the only game I really wanted for it was Nights into Dreams, so I poked around eBay and found one person selling several games including Nights for around the same price most were asking for it solo. I imagine the seller probably didn't realize what they had, so I grabbed the set, thankful this was online since that meant my face wouldn't give away what I was up to. And isn't Panzer Dragoon also really rare? I might have lucked out more than I thought. I bought the Dreamcast just for the novelty of it and thought I didn't have any games for it. But when poking around, I found that I did have exactly one title, Sonic Shuffle, so it continues to be a novelty thing. Think I picked it up at a convention. Maybe I should try expanding my library for it, but hey, that takes care of Sega. Microsoft was another easy one. I had a few games for Xbox before I bought it, Tales of Vesperia and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 I picked up to play on a friend's console. I grabbed my own 360 when it was cheap one Black Friday, specifically to play Vesperia, and then grabbed a bunch of other games afterwards to justify my purchase. That and Dynasty Warriors Gundam are probably the things I played the most of the others getting only one clear or maybe just a few hours of playtime. Also managed to somehow snag a copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 without breaking the bank, which is neat, but for some reason didn't work all that well on the 360. Weird, you'd figure it run better on stronger hardware, but yeah, a bit of an underutilized console for me. Then I went to Sony, which, surprisingly, had only one digital title, my backer edition for Mighty No. 9. I enjoy the game, you don't need to laugh. Anyway, the handhelds were the easiest outs, so I started there. I had played the first Disgaea game on DS, so surprisingly, I got the PSP specifically to play the sequel, though both Mega Man remakes followed soon after. Since I had access to the originals, I didn't feel as compelled to buy a new system for them, but they at least played a part in getting me to pick up a PSP. Most of the other games were either from Nippon Ichi continuing the Disgaea theme, or just random crap I picked up. When it came to the Vita, I think I have to embarrassingly admit that I grabbed that for Senran Kagura. The concept of a booby game was just really funny to me back when, though I was kinda surprised when I wound up enjoying Shinobi Versus for its gameplay and soundtrack. Almost everything else was stuff that I already owned for PS3 and didn't wind up playing much of, if at all, though hey, a part of me still wants to play every Tales game, so I'm glad to have Hearts to get around to. Eventually. As for the other stuff, well, I had to start pulling a bit more off of my backlog shelf for this. I got the PlayStation 2 used, long after the fact, just for its reputation, and as you can probably figure, I used it mostly for Mega Man. Dragon Quest, Gundam, and Tales were also pretty big sellers for me, but at that point, my Mega Man X collection for GameCube only had up to X6, so I needed it to play X7 and 8, as well as 2 of the Legends games, thanks to its backwards compatibility. Also pretty neat that I have both Tales of Destiny titles, though I think those did cost me a pretty penny. As for the PS3, picked it up mostly for Disgaea and Tales, of which many remain unplayed. Still wasn't too hard to inventory, though this was where I had to decide whether to list out each individual title included in a collection. I decided that, at least for now, I didn't need to pad things out any further. If I forget that Sly Cooper Collection has 3 games in it, it'd be easy enough to figure out. There was even more when it came to PS4. This, I think I picked up because there was a lot on it, and it was also a Blu-ray player. Then again, maybe that's what I picked up the PS3 for. Anyway, Tales and Senran Kagura probably both helped draw me in too. If you look at it, you can definitely tell how much of a weeb I am, and over half of these games remain on my backlog. Probably because I keep it in the living room instead of my computer room, where I prefer to play. After that, I moved on to Steam, which I probably should have done earlier, since I just had to go down an already alphabetized list and mark which ones I still needed to play or not. Not nearly as big as a lot of people's Steam library. I prefer console gaming, so I only pick things up there if I can't get them elsewhere. And I'll be showing a censored version, because yes, I do play adult games on Steam, and I have too much shame to post them here. Though I did talk about one in a very early video of mine. Have fun trying to find that. Anyway, also had a few CD-ROMs of some old Sonic titles, oddly enough, and I also included Street Fighter X Mega Man, since I do have it downloaded. Anyway, this one's embarrassing, let's move on. Now here's where things get crazy. I grew up in a Nintendo household, so the number of Nintendo games I own is astronomically more than anything else. Super Nintendo was the first console I ever owned, with Donkey Kong Country coming packaged with it, making it the first game to be added to my collection as well. Though it was joint ownership with my brother. Not that it matters much these days, when he got out of games, I inherited the lot, no one even needed to die. That at least contributed a good bit to the size of my library, at least up through the GameCube. But back to the SNES, my collection was still largely organized how I prefer, so it was pretty easy to put together. A few special notes: Separation Anxiety was the first game we beat, Mega Man X was a game I rented a lot and was thrilled when I finally got a used copy one birthday, Claymates was another rental that, while not the greatest, I still had enough memories of that I picked it up while retro hunting, and 2 games, Miss Pac-Man and Space Invaders, my mom actually bought to play, since she liked the arcade versions. This might be the system with my strongest memories. The original Nintendo we picked up a few years later, once my parents saw how into some of the games we got. Gyromite is probably the weirdest thing here, which I don't think I ever played, I just picked it up secondhand much later. And of course I have Mega Man 2 and 3. I used to think it was really weird that the 2 classic titles I just happened to get were the most popular entries, since if they were so popular, shouldn't they already have been all bought up? I eventually understood though that the games that sell more get more copies printed, hence the more niche, at least at the time, the harder they are to come across. Supply and demand and all that jazz. Anyway, I had these sitting in a very large shoebox, so I had to shuffle them around a bit, and I also noticed something else. When my cousin got rid of his NES, he gave us a few of his games, which led to us having doubles of Kirby's Adventure and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and when looking through my boxes, I no longer saw the extras. Not that I want them, they were a gift anyway, so no loss regifting them. I'm just curious who I passed them along to. If the recipient in question happens to be watching, please let me know. After that, I moved on to N64, which is when I noticed something funny. I was missing 3 games that I knew for a fact I owned. Banjo-Kazooie, Mario Party, and Mario Party 3. Pretty easy to notice when the sequels are all still sticking around. My brother Sam was my immediate suspect, and yet he hates Mario Party, so why would he be holding on to them? No, these were the games that my sister was fond of, so I had to question whether she had bought an N64 and I'd just forgotten about them. Had to make some phone calls, but I tracked them down, and while I asked for Banjo back since I wanted to do a run of that soon, I told her she could keep the other two and just threw the loaned out status into the chart. Really should be keeping track of that stuff anyway. A lot of good Rareware games on the N64, so I am quite fond of the console, as well as me remembering getting into Zelda with a friend suggesting Ocarina, and me playing a ton of Smash and Pokemon on the console as well. I tell you, when I found out that the system didn't do so hot sales-wise, I was pretty surprised since it was the console of choice, at least where I live. After that, I knocked out GameCube quick, which wasn't hard to do since there was only a few games on my backlog, or at least it wouldn't be, if I didn't have to remember what my brother was borrowing from me. He has not only Air Ride and recently borrowed Zelda, but he also has 2 Fire Emblems, the rarest and priciest ones. I think he also has my Sonic Adventure 2/Sonic Advance guide, and also a few more things, until I brought it up and he gave me some of my games back. Not a big deal, as long as I know where they are, though I was missing that guide when I wanted to get some Chaos Emeralds during a stream. I ended with 0. Anyway, as you can probably tell by how GameCube has the most entries so far, I think this was when I started having a bit more money due to odd jobs, and I think my first part-time gig. Plus, I think my parents started being a little less strict with our TV time, so this is probably the console I played the most with my brother, not Sam, so it's probably the system I have the second most nostalgia for. After that, I messed around with handheld stuff, just needing to sort my Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges that were just kinda thrown in a carrying case, but it wasn't too hard to do. Similar situation with Game Boy Advance, though that one was a bit more complicated due to me wanting to include my e-reader cards, some of which contain games, others are more just DLC events. But without the internet! Did panic when I thought I lost them and had to go through a lot of folders. And if you don't remember what an e-reader is, don't worry, nobody does. Anyway, looking at GBA proper, not quite half of my games were Mega Man, so this was mostly my Battle Network machine. And going back to regular Game Boy, the first title I was gifted alongside my pocket was Dr. Wily's Revenge. Also had a good bit of Pokemon, including 2 copies of the trading card game. Really should find someone to give the extra to. I do not need my brother's copy. Then I moved on to the DS, and there's a good bit there. Another good chunk of Mega Man stuff. Really wish I could record Star Force, maybe I need to look into an emulator. A bunch more Pokemon, all the Ace Attorney games for the system, and a few Dragon Quest as well. I did have to remind myself that I had some loose cartridges, not on the shelf, but hey, great system with a lot of great games. Though there were a few stinkers. This is also the first category where I had to notate that I had a bad copy, with Sonic Rush Adventure, because I didn't test it until I was ready to play it, much later down the line. Found out about Kirby 64 when I went to stream it, so it got its label later. And just for some easy outs, I gathered up my Virtual Boy games, got the system off eBay, I was not someone who actually picked it up from Toys R Us, as well as my sorta but not quite games, the Pokemon Walker and Pikachu, and Zelda Game & Watch. Did panic a bit when I couldn't find my Wario Land cartridge since that was the one game I actually wanted to play on Virtual Boy, but I found it still in the system. Oh, and in case anyone's wondering, do not play the Virtual Boy. When I got it, I got a headache after about an hour of play. Then, when I put it down for a while and tried again, it only took a half hour. It is awful. I went back to TV compatible with Wii, and had a few more digital titles I needed to log, though I also had to decide what I counted as worth putting down. The store channel didn't seem worth it, but I could do a video or stream creating Mii's, so Mii channel did. I think the forecast, news, and We Speak channels are out of service, but hey, I never used them and maybe someone can jury-rig something up at some point, so I put them down even if I probably shouldn't have. Anyway, a lot of games here end with the motion sensor gimmick. Some sucked, some didn't. And some worked surprisingly well, like Link's crossbow training. I also asked for Wii music for Christmas back when it was still new for some reason. Also worth noting is this is one of the systems I got at launch. I definitely had my part-time job for the duration, and I played a lot with friends, which is why I have so many games for it. For the Wii U, I was surprised by how much I had. While I love Nintendo, the system confused me. Was it a new console or peripheral? And even when I figured it out, it had like 2 games I wanted to play on it, Pikmin 3 and I guess Super Mario 3D World. Then they announced Smash, so I picked it up a few months early so I could play Hyrule Warriors, a game that I played an obscene amount with my roommates co-op. Got a bunch of stuff after that, was thrilled with Nintendo's new IP Splatoon, and will never not be disappointed by Star Fox Zero. The majority of my games for Wii U, though, are digital. I bought a few here and there, then panic purchased a ton last minute, right before the shop went down. Only for a bunch of the games to get put up on NSO Plus soon after. I swear they killed the shop at least in part to make that seem like a better deal. How else are you gonna play Minish Cap and Donkey Kong 64? Anyway, had the digital stuff organized by series and how much I care on my Wii U, so I had to do a bit of shuffling around. I also had to decide whether to list DLC since they are pieces of content that are available to me, but aren't actually new games. In the end, I decided that I didn't need to list out each individual Mii costume I have in Smash. If it seems like it's a game I'm into, just assume I bought all the extra stuff, though I do almost feel like I'm selling Octo Expansion short by not including it. Anyway, 3DS was a mix of everything. Games from my shelf, from my backlog, lots of digital titles I bought at the last minute, a few defunct programs like Pokemon Transporter, and even one busted copy of Kid Icarus Uprising. That's fine, I didn't want to mess with your stupid controls anyway. It was definitely the hardest to organize thus far, but hey, I did it. Another system with a lot of great games, a few bad ones, and a good bit of Pokemon and surprisingly Mega Man, mostly due to the retro stuff I got on the eShop. With as much use as I got out of this one, I feel like I should have more to say about it, but most of the series that I played on it have already been mentioned. Guess I could say that I rarely use the 3D, only a few times I let myself be guilted into it because, hey, I did pay for it. Maybe it would be easier to port more of the games on it so that I could actually record them if they hadn't thrown that function in. Then finally, I reached the Switch, though I did put it off for as long as I could. This was a nightmare to organize since I have two Switches. I got one at launch, which I swapped out for the stealth upgrade with a longer battery life, and then bought an OLED on top of that. So not only did I have a Switch from the start, I picked it up for ARMS and Splatoon, but got Breath of the Wild and Bomberman so I'd have something to play early on, but I needed to put together a list of my physical games, backlog titles, digital stuff across 2 models, and everything I had deleted to save memory space but could re-download. They're still there, even if they're not, they're there. I put this off for a while, just because of how Herculean a task it would be, and yeah, this was pretty nasty. Just wait until we get into specific numbers, but as a preview, about a third of my games are on the Switch. Could have padded the numbers even more had I listed out each individual game included with the base NSO plan, but nope, I was good and stuck with the collection rule. As for why I have so many damn titles for the Switch, it is essentially my Steam. So many smaller indie games that I can just easily pick up and then never get around to playing, and then, on top of that, Nintendo just stacked the system with so many in-house games, from so many series I love, that I just keep buying full-price stuff as well. In addition to that, I got it at launch, had a full-time job for almost the full duration, and the Switch has one of the longest shelf lives of any console, and I just have so much stuff for the thing, it's almost mind-boggling. Also bought a few things on impulse when GameStop threw some buy two, get a third sale. While I mostly play it docked, I do love the option to go handheld, so I'm able to get in some extra playtime away from home. Even without the nostalgia I have for some of these other systems, the Switch might just be my favorite console of all time. Underpowered hardware be damned. You just can't argue with that library. As for what I play most on the system, I think it goes Pokemon, Mega Man, Smash, and Splatoon. And for a few special notes, Cuphead has the distinction of being listed twice, since I bought it digitally, then got the physical when it dropped, and there is exactly one adult game on the list that I didn't black out. Good luck picking it out. It was before that sort of thing became a problem for the shop. A friend and I saw it and thought it'd be funny, so we picked it up. The gameplay was better than it had any right to be. And with that, I completed the damn list and have been doing my best to keep up with it, so that I'd never need to redo it. Now let's get into the totals, for all you number nerds, or just those curious to see how the different systems and companies stack up. Genesis 9, Saturn 8, Dreamcast 1, for a total of 18 for Sega. 1 for Xbox, 14 for 360, for a total of 15 Microsoft. PlayStation 6, PS2 13, PS3 23, PS4 46, PSP 14, Vita 8, for a total of 110 from Sony. 4 CD-ROMs, 1 random, and 62 for Steam, which is a good bit come to think of it, so 67 for PC total. NES 12, SNES 32, N64 26, GameCube 46, Wii 81, Wii U 62, Game Boy 18, Color 2, GBA 24 with another 14 for e-reader, DS 51, 3DS 89, Virtual Boy 6, 3 others, and Switch 297. 763 for Nintendo total. Oh boy. The grand total is 973. So yeah, my collection is overwhelmingly Nintendo, and like I said, while not quite a third, just the Switch alone almost does reach that ratio. And hey, I'll probably hit 1,000 total next year. I may have a problem. Also of special note, the game I own the most copies of is Mega Man 3. For original hardware on the GameCube's Anniversary Collection, the Legacy Collection for 3DS, PS4, and Switch, and pushing it over 2's total, just the digital copy for 3DS. Redundant? Yes, very. I just really like that one. So why did I do all this anyway? Well, part of it is because I like making lists and keeping things organized. Might even expand it to include each title in collections, and list out average playtimes, maybe even genre. Like I said, I really like doing this sort of thing, even if Switch was overwhelming. It was also because I've been asked what sort of games I like, and what sort of things people could suggest that I play. Well, I'd say this probably sums things up pretty well, though me picking up a random copy of Dead or Alive or Terry Pratchett's Discworld muddies the waters a bit. I guess the more entries in a series, or the more times I bought the same game, is probably a good indicator that I'm into something. I've thrown the full list up on the Discord server, and I'll probably try to upload an updated copy about once a month, if you're interested what sort of stuff I have access to. Though keep in mind that my ability to record most handheld consoles might be a bit limited. Guess that can be my closing question for the week though, since I'm not about to ask people to post their full collections as well. What do you think of mine? Is it impressive? Is it sad? How bad is my habit of buying games that I don't have the time to play? And are there any that I own that I should do videos on? That'll do it for this week, so thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into platformers, especially Mega Man. I really need to get back to him next week.